Privateer broadcast.
The issue is, like, and again, like, this harkens back to another article we were talking about in the previous stream, is the on top, at the top of the article, it said subject to change. So it's like, if they're not even sure about whether they can meet those dates that they've set, like, how should we like be able to expect those changes to come in?
Yeah, we were speaking about this the previous stream. Like, it's really sketchy for developers to do that. And I'm not like taking shots at developers, but I'm saying, like, it usually they can't live up to the commitments. There, what's your perspective on that? Because obviously Cyberpunk had their roadmap and they had a lot of issues with development. Meeting those commitments. So
like, if they're completely unsure about whether they can meet those dates, then they should just not bother putting dates there at all and just wait until they're 100% certain that they can meet those dates.
You got to find the balance. Cool. Like, how do you engage with the community and tell them when updates are coming, and when do you just keep your head down and just work? Where's the balance?
How do you commit to a release date when you got hacked by somebody that put you out for work for everybody for 2 weeks? How do you deal with that? What do you tell people? And then if you tell people they're not happy, what do you do with that? How do you make everyone happy, right? How do you deal with the pandemic when you were planning to release a game in 2020 and a pandemic strikes halfway through development and you have to lay off staff and figure out other things? How do you deal with that? What happens when you miss those commitments? Who's happy? Who's not? You know what I mean? Like, it's a catch-22 for everyone involved. If you're a consumer, it sucks. If you're a developer, it sucks. Even for business people, it's kind of awful too, because a lot of business people do need to make those sales and shit so they can keep people on staff and stuff like that, right? Like, I don't know. I don't like the Cyberpunk story is wild. It's just so wild. There's so much shit that went down with that. Like, not only was it weird business practices, but the whole, like, to have the idea that someone got into their code base is so, like, that makes me like kind of like cringe up a little bit, because it feels dirty. Like, oh god, like, to know that someone was snooping around their code, that's just like, oh, it's so
supposedly
gross.
It was stolen and sold as well, and so they sold it. And
the thing is, when you're working at that scale, like, if that happened to me, let's say that happened, like, and Facebook gets targeted by random stuff like that all the time, right? So Meta is subject to something like that. If that happened to us, it's not a 2-week process. That could be a month. That could be 2 months of not developing, because we have to scan through everyone's computer, figure out what gateway got hacked, whose computer it was, why it happened. Like, those things get wild. And it's not just when we're talking about these things, we're talking about them as in an extreme. Like, that is a very extreme case of something like that happen. There are minor things that take up weeks of time. I have bugs that have taken me months to fix that sound like the simplest things in the world, but when you're working in a very complex system, it's hard to say. I don't know. The dates thing is a weird thing to talk about, because it's like, you need a date to give to people, and you have to say it's subject to change so you don't get sued when you don't meet it if something does happen. Like, those lines, the subject to change, this gameplay was captured on blank system, or this is in pre-alpha. That is to cover their ass. That is so they don't get sued and stuff like that. But when at every moment of development, when we're asked to make marketing material, we want to make the best so we can show you and hope that it will entice people to buy the game. But I don't know. There's so many factors there that are hard to speak to without being on the production floor itself, but with, like, just in general. Like, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, I guess, is the best way to put it.
I would say it's really complicated, because I understand both sides' perspective on those things. Because you assume, like, when you say that you're gonna do it, and like you're gonna do it, but it's just like the consumer don't see the behind the scenes sort of thing of what's happening. Like,
I get it.
It's a complicated issue.
Yeah,
I still think that one of 343's biggest mistakes to this day was saying that the game was content ready before releasing it.
Probably, yeah.
They made an official statement. They said that. Is that what they said?
Yeah, they said in the interview that the game was content ready. I still think that was one of their biggest mistakes. And again, I still stand by my opinion that regardless of how unpopular of a decision it would have been, I still think they should have delayed the game by another year, regardless of the whatever negative perception that gets. Because again, at the end of the day, like, if you're going to release a game, you might as well just make sure that it comes out as best as possible. And again, pandemic, blah blah blah, I know all that stuff happened and stuff. It's just, again, with the way Halo Infinite launched, it was lacking so much content. It's just another year. The game would have benefited from another year. When you look at all this stuff that they're releasing now, imagine if they actually had delayed it and released it in this December.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's more like maybe it's something with the development process. I don't know, because I know games are more complex to make, especially now than before. I think we're just trying to figure out how to make games faster. I don't know, because people will demand more.
It's not. There's some things you just can't make faster. Like it's impossible in some aspects. Like I think what would be interesting, and I will never be able to see this unless I happen to get a job at 343, and I don't think people that I know that maybe work there right now don't even get to see this. Is like I want to know how many failed versions of Halo Infinite there are, because like that's something that would say a lot to why the final version looks the way it does and feels the way it does, because there's probably the amount of mechanics on the cutting room floor, the amount of concept, the amount of art that's probably just sitting there that just can't be used for whatever reason, or just doesn't fit their current version of the game or something like that. Like, I don't know. It's the story of development is never. There's no single good telling of the story of development. Everyone's gonna have a different perspective on why something didn't work and a different reason for why they feel that way, right? I would also have liked if they had delayed the game, because I put in about 100. I'm almost up to 200 hours in Halo Infinite. I've been playing that game a lot.
On PC, right?
Yeah. And like I feel like the core gameplay is very strong, and so to me, it makes me wonder how long it took to get him to make the game feel the way it does right now, and what got cut along the way to service what the feeling. Because I think that's the core of what they really wanted to do and get correct. I think it's the core of what a lot of games wanted to get right. Is like, if it doesn't feel good to play your game, then no one's gonna give a fuck.
I mean, make no mistake, it does feel good to play that game, and I've said this before. The game looks great, it sounds great, and it plays great. And the campaign was pretty solid in my opinion. It's just everything else. Again, it was just lacking in every other department. It was just lacking in content.
I think the legacy of Halo has always been about the multiplayer, right? They just wanted to get that right so much, but it's important though, for sure. Like the gameplay, everyone's wanting to see how they go back to their roots. What does that feel like? It was a big deal for sure, man. Yeah, go there.
And I will praise 343 head over heels every single time for taking something that was a linear experience and making it into an open world experience. Because if they're working with the technology they've worked with for like the last 10 or 15 years, and to convert those ideas over to not only run at 60 frames per second on the Xbox Series S and X and all that other stuff, but also to be able to function on a PC, which is like working with like. The PC platform is very interesting because you're going to get a lot of weird bugs for if someone's using an AMD card, if someone's using an NVIDIA card, if someone's using an AMD CPU, if someone's using an Intel CPU. Like those things stack and multiply quickly. Like on one of the games I worked on, we had to make special in-house computer builds that we had to swap out cards and make sure that we were servicing certain things, because we would sometimes get a bug that was very specific to just this one video card or just this one CPU isn't working for some reason. And the thing is that when a bug is 1 in a million, if you're selling your game to 8 million people, that means that at least 8 people have it, and then that might compound even more as time goes on.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.